All right, let's try this again. Sorry about that. Welcome to the MMOA Podcast. I'm just going to start all over again. It's brought to you by the Institute of Clinical Excellence. My name is Dr. Samantha Chamberlain. I am a TA with the Older Adult Division, and I have the privilege of being your host this morning. We have several live courses coming up over the next month, but for the ultimate live course of the year, we want you to join all 10 of the MMOA Division faculty in Lexington, Kentucky, August 12th and 13th. We are so excited to all be together for that course, and what would make it even better is to have a packed house. So please join us in Lexington, Kentucky on August 12th and 13th. Today's topic is one that we get quite a few questions about and comments about within all of our courses, and it's about being a fitness-forward clinician in a non-fitness-forward workplace. To take that a step further, being a PTA or a CODA in those situations, being those clinicians that have to have a supervising clinician when even your supervising clinician may not be at that fitness forward level. So it's not even just the workplace, but it's even the people that you are working around and with all the time. So as a PTA, you're wanting to, of course, follow your supervising PT's plan of care or your supervising clinician's plan of care. And so that can be that progressing, and that expectation can be a little bit touchy if you don't have a good relationship or good communication. So that's where that being clear is very important for having different treatment approaches. I personally have been aggressive with therapy from even as a new grad, aggressive, right? So I'm very thankful I found ICE, because I had other clinicians I was working with that really made me doubt myself and doubt like if I should be having people do this much. But, they're telling me they're doing X, Y, and Z at home, and then the treatment doesn't match up with that. So that's where my brain was at as a new grad. So having ICE was really important for me. But this isn't about me. This is about Chrissy here. I have longtime family acquaintance turned coworker, turned bestie, turned business partner, the future Dr. Chrissy Hale with us today. She is a PTA of 8 years and a current student physical therapist. We have been working together for about 3.5 years. Previous to our time together, I believe she was at a good clinic. They treated athletes frequently, so I think that carried over to like the general patient population. So I would say maybe like PT 1.5, maybe not 2.0 yet, but I'll let her speak to that. So pre your ICE knowledge, what were some of the pros, cons of your two previous work locations, and before I came to work at your former previous employee?
So with my previous employer, I was at a orthopedic outpatient clinic, and I had an extremely heavy caseload. So that caseload was very much more quantity focused rather than quality care. I had the passion for older adults. I've always had that passion, but I didn't have quite the knowledge to do so. And so often we were just going off of a list of things to do based on their first visit with a PT. And then we kind of progressed from that list. Prior to working with Sam, I was at a tribal population. Well, we both were, but I was with a previous supervisor who was deeply immersed into the chronic pain / persistent pain space. And because I had no prior knowledge of that area of PT, I honestly hated it. I hated sitting in front of patients, reading off of note cards, giving them a fibromyalgia workbook, and then letting them think that their pain was all in their head instead of their brain, like we were taught to teach. But they were almost told to buy into it themselves rather than us trying to build the bike. And I knew that the pain came from a lack of movement somewhere, but I couldn't treat the way that I needed to because my PT was so deeply immersed into the pain science. So I had to take her approach first so that we had that treatment congruency.
So she's been at a couple different clinics where fitness forward was not the main approach. Mm-hmm. So orthopedic clinic where it was kind of there, but it was still too much quantity to give the care that they really needed for the time that they needed it. And then, of course, a very different approach where we're going to talk about all of it. And don't worry, Dr. Dunaway. She knows that you're on the list of classes she needs, but as you know, she's at South, so she's got a busy schedule right now, but we'll get there. No, don't worry. She won't hate it forever. So looking back at that scenario, and for people with the same type of scenarios of that, how would you approach that now? Like, how would you approach that, like, very deep, like having conversations about your pain? And I did see several of those patients again, like they were repeat offenders where they did come in saying, well, the last person here told me it was all in my head. So that's like the last thing that we want patients to do, because that is all in their head instead of like the brain network type thing, which is a hard thing to explain if you're haven't taken Dr. Dunaway's course. Shameless pitch here. But go ahead and tell like what your approach would be at this point.
So I told Sam prior to this that I would honestly try to get her to buy into ICE. That's which transformed me into the clinician that I am today. And if she and I couldn't be on the same page, it would honestly be a constant battle because the patients wouldn't be getting that treatment congruency that they needed. And so they would be getting two different approaches, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It would just be one thing versus the other. And I think it would be just a constant struggle of the patients either getting pain science, getting that workbook, getting those note cards, and then coming to me and saying, all right, let's move.
But this card said, there might be some discrepancies there too. So kind of shifting gears, like that was past. When I came to work with Chrissy, I was able to get some of that buy-in with her and trust pretty early after I dished out some Jefferson curls for her personally. Suddenly she could reach her toes. I heard her tell a patient, oh, I can't reach my toes either. And I was like, here's my chance.
Here we go.
And so I'd see her doing these once or twice a week randomly throughout the clinic and then sharing the information with patients as well. So I was able to build the bite with her. And we've used that term a couple of times here. So if you aren't familiar with that phrase, a quick explanation is I was able to make therapy tangible for her or show my knowledge to her in a very tangible way. She had an issue or an asterisk sign, as we call it. We treated it, it improved. Suddenly she could touch her toes whenever she wanted, mostly. Much like when you go to purchase an item such as a bike. You get to customize it, you get to try it, you get to sit on it, you know what you're getting, and you get it. So I started to build the bike, and I like to say she's been cruising ever since. But Chrissy was already really great with patients. She already had that therapeutic alliance. She knew it was important to talk to them. She knew it was important to listen to it. But of course, me being deep in the ice Kool-Aid already, I knew there was room for intervention growth. Like, she said she was kind of used to having this list, and that was kind of her guardrail. Like, here's your list, here's what you're doing. And we all know that from one day to the next, especially with the older adult population, the list method doesn't really work. Nope. They might feel better because they got some movement in, but as far as like targeting what actually needs to be targeted and getting something long-term out of it instead of, oh, we're great this week and next week, and then a month from now they're coming back to you after you've discharged them because they're hurt all over again. We know that list is going to put them in that boat as opposed to you see them 6 months down the road at the grocery store and they have a full cart and they're doing just fine. So that's where I saw the room for growth with Chrissy. So she was in undergrad finishing her bachelor so that she could go to PT school. And so I would just sprinkle information in. I wasn't pushing take ICE courses because I knew she already had a full plate. So I would just sprinkle information in where I could. And I could see the annoyance from time to time where she was like, why do we still have this person? Because she was so used to just getting people through the door and out. So then I went on maternity leave. And here is where like the meat of the episode is for a lot of you clinicians that aren't in a fitness forward workplace or have someone in the same building as you that treats the same way or can validate your feelings. So I went on maternity leave. This was before she took some ICE courses. But what happened?
You thought you needed another baby.
I did. He's really cute too.
He is cute. I'll give her that. But so what happened was we didn't have like a set PT to come in and fill Sam's spot. So I was seeing the same kind of caseload, but multiple PTs were coming in and doing the evaluation. So I was having to treat kind of based on their treatment approaches. And that caused me to fall off of my little bit of ICE knowledge that I had. I quickly fell back into my old routine of just treating
like the EMOMs went away, like the every minute on the minute, like the fitness programming style is what I was getting messages about was going away.
And it kind of went away quickly. And then I was just trying to basically get through my days because I wasn't enjoying who I was working with as well. So that was playing a big part into me kind of just falling off into old routine.
So you fell off into old routine. Things weren't going as well. The clinic wasn't as fun, of course. But then you had one scenario specifically where together we have gotten in the routine of listening to the patient. Like we have a general idea of what we're doing with the patient for the day, but that can change based on what they tell us. So there was a scenario where she finally like broke down and messaged me, which of course she could have done at any time. But she had a patient come in, and the patient was being seen for their shoulder, but the patient's back was killing them that day.
Yes.
Like they were not going to be able to walk if someone didn't do something for them. Like they were done for the day. Yeah. And so kind of tell me how that went down for you.
Yeah. So the patient came in, we were seeing her for her shoulder, potentially like a little bit of neck stuff, a little bit of carpal tunnel, maybe. But she came in, she was literally holding her back, coming in limping, said, I can't walk. I don't even know that my shoulder is there today because of how bad I feel. And knowing what I knew through Sam and learning like the little bit of ice that I had, I knew that we treat the whole human. And so I said, say less. Let's treat your back today. Let's try to make this feel better, and we'll worry about your shoulder another day. And she was like, done, deal. So what I did was I started her on some heat. I did some manual therapy to her low back, some gentle stretching. I did some long axis distraction to her hips, just trying to help her to feel a little bit better. And thankfully we did. We went from a 7 out of 10 to a 4 out of 10. She was able to stand up tall, and she was able to walk out of the clinic and carry on about her day. Cue her progress note. We had another PT come in, and she had read through some of my notes with this patient and saw that I had completely neglected her shoulder one day and just treated her back. And I was so harshly reprimanded for that I even told Sam, I even went as far as to say, I would have rather her swatted me with a paddle rather than her constantly. She just berated me and told me that I had put her license on the line. I had put my license on the line. I had put the Cherokee Nation on the line. I had done everything wrong. How dare I treat her back? How dare I step out of those lines? How dare I think that I had the sort of autonomy to do so without any sort of permission or referral for her back? And it just went on. And it was to the point where all that I could say was okay, because I knew that if I said anything, it would just be another struggle. And so I said, okay, got it. Won't happen again.
So there's definitely some like discussion that could be had there as far as like PTA autonomy and treating a body part that hasn't been evaluated. So I could understand where this PT was coming from. However, I also know that she is aware of red flags. I also know she didn't do any like grade 5, grade 4. Like she didn't do anything that would have put this patient at more harm than just her walking into the clinic did. So there wasn't any like issue of doing harm here. She did good by listening to the patient, because for all we know, her back was hurting because she wasn't using her arm and needed some help that day. So to keep this person going, to keep this person from laying around for maybe a week or more, who knows, she provided some care aside from her shoulder.
Yeah.
She knew that I would be completely okay with it, because that's how we treat people. We listen to what's going on with them. That was not her plan for the day. I'm sure she had all sorts of plans to primarily focus on that patient's shoulder and to get that person stronger. Mm-hmm. But it probably did include some bracing and stabilizing through the back. So instead of doing exercises for it, she put in some modalities. She put in some manual therapy to get that human feeling better for that day and letting them be a full human for the day instead of just miserable. So that is when that really kicked Chrissy into high gear and made her realize that not everyone has the treatment approach that we had developed and that we had progressed and built ourselves into. So after that moment, what did you do? So the reason I say it this way is because she's like, that was the moment when it was like, I'm treating the way that we've been treating. So she said she'd fallen off. She'd kind of gone back into like the list mode of just getting through patients, and that was that. But that specific event really triggered Chrissy to do what?
I swore basically to myself that day and to Sam that I was never going to fall into being the norm ever again. I was going to treat these humans the way that they needed to be treated, with the intensity and the purposefulness that they deserved. rather than just seeing them for one thing. I was going to treat the whole human, period.
I think that's really a powerful thing to say, because it's so easy to fall off of that when you don't have someone. So we want to kind of wrap this up, and we probably will do another part here so that we can get more into like the meat of how to communicate those things when you are in that scenario. But we just wanted to give a little bit of an introduction here. But 3 points I would like you guys to think about is communication. Duh, right? Like, but approach it with curiosity, approach it with observation opposed to accusation. Like, if you see the clinicians around you are not pushing it enough, if you kind of go into it with like, hey, I noticed, like for an example, Susie's tolerance to these interventions has really improved. What do you think about adding some weight to her sit-to-stands or adding in a hip hinge? She really wants to get back to cooking meals with her cast iron skillets for family gatherings. So when you tie it back to a goal, and when the goal doesn't match any of what that clinician has them doing, when you put like what that patient is coming to you for at the forefront, then that clinician is going to have to start questioning what they're doing with that patient and why they're doing it. So you're kind of putting it back on them as opposed to pointing out, hey, you're not doing your job real good. So like letting them have their own autonomy to realize that there's more that they could be doing.
While also planting that IC.
Yeah, exactly. And the IC is important here for sure. And so you can start shifting that language and shifting those interventions gradually. And the more that they see, primarily is you got to show it to them. Like if you start treating with fitness forward programming, if you start doing EMOMs, if you start having older adults do hip hinges, aka deadlifts, they get better quicker and they have more fun with you and they're excited to come to therapy instead of dreading it. And they walk taller, they come in happier. Like there's just so much to it that will start to show, and other clinicians around you are going to be like, what are they doing differently? And they're going to start paying attention. Another couple things that we talked about were, don't be afraid to reach out to clinicians around you. I tell students all the time, like whether it's high schoolers or kids in college or adults in college, I let them know, like, I am happy to help. Like, I want to make sure that you are getting the information that you need. And I don't want you to think that, you know, maybe you had a bad experience at another PT clinic, or maybe you had a bad experience as a PT and that's why you're becoming a PT. Like there's so many different scenarios that people go through, but like I want to share the knowledge that I have within this profession because I want this profession to continue to get better. I want that rebrand, that PT 2.0 to be prevalent, not abnormal. Like I want that to become the norm. So usually clinicians are very happy to share their information with others. So don't be afraid to reach out to people around you. And then just a tip to supervising clinicians. Listen to your assistants. They are knowledgeable. They have experience too. Let them grow. Let them practice their full scope. Don't be afraid to give them some room to like develop and be creative and let them shine. I feel like sometimes we tend to dampen people down a little bit and not let them show all of what they know because they're scared to, or they don't think they're allowed to, or whatever it may be. But really giving them the space to progress those patients and to practice their full scope, I think is really important. And I think some people struggle with that control. So really push autonomy, not just with your patients, but with the people that you're working with as well. And lastly, another shameless ice plug. One of our favorite comments is that we change clinicians for the better, whether it's their treatment approach, whether it's keeping them from a career change. That was my story. I was a year in and ready to be done. Burnout, just there's so many different comments that we get, and they're all our favorites when it comes down to, I now love my career because of ice, or I love this, I did not know this. Like there's so many things. And you can have the ICE podcast playing in the, like if you have a shared office, just get the ICE podcast. We're on every day. So like there's some ways to start filtering in or planting those ICE seeds and getting people like kind of catching something that they like and then they kind of dig into it themselves. So it's not like you have to like shove it in their face. There's ways to start sprinkling it in. We'll probably have 2 or 3 more parts to this. And one of them is about like the change that I saw Chrissy. Like I want to get her perspective and mine as well on her completing her cert-MMOA and like the difference that I saw. Like there were so many light bulb moments where she would come in and she'd be like, I get it now. I get it now. And then I got to teach at the life course that she went to as well. And so like just watching her in class, like have these like, Like, it was fantastic. So getting to see those moments from my perspective and hers as well will be another part to this podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful 4th of July tomorrow, and happy aging.